Okay, in this today's session, what we are going to discuss about is we are going to discuss about the concept of SAP HANA licensing. Say there is one customer, some XYZ customer, want to implement SAP HANA in whatever the way you want. There are so many ways you can use SAP HANA. There are so many different deployment solutions offered by SAP. So irrespective of that, whenever a customer want to implement SAP HANA in their company, the first and foremost thing what that customer need to do is you need to look for the licensing from SAP. So when a customer want to have a license from SAP, what kind of options the customers are having, and part of those licensings, what software components are provided by SAP, and then knowing about the significance of each and every software component is important. So it may happen that in the companies, when it comes to any implementation of a solution, they may use all the components provided by SAP or they may not use, but knowing about those components will be very, very important for you as an administrator because that makes a difference. So you know that there is something, some functionality, some feature like this which can be utilized by the company. You can suggest them in a specific situation. So you can suggest the customer, okay, this is a feature available which you can utilize. That's why knowing about those software components which are provided by SAP part of the licensing is very, very important. So that's what we are going to discuss about. It just cannot be completed in one single session. At least there will be nearly 2.5 sessions only for this understanding and knowing about the licensing and software components provided by SAP part of the licensing. So let us begin with that. As of today, if anyone want to go with SAP HANA, any customer want to buy HANA licensing, SAP High Performance Analytics Appliance, the version available for you is 2.0. So that's the version we are speaking about, HANA 2.0. And generally, they'll keep on doing some enhancements in between. They'll keep on releasing those enhancements, fixes and all that. That will be in the form of SPS. SPS stands for Support Package Stack. So basically support package stack is nothing but a collection of support packages related to different software components. Okay, so as of now SPS 00 only we have, so we don't mention specifically that. Generally we just say HANA 2.0. So if you want to know what the brief history about SAP HANA, when it was released, customer, and what are those support package stacks they've released and all that, just a small information if you need. So basically the first general availability of HANA started with HANA 1.0 with SPS 03. This was the first general availability, or you call it as release to customer, RTC. So that they did almost September-November time period in 2011. You can call it as September, but I'll go with the November in general. So the first general availability started with SPS 03. Earlier to that, there is a ramp-up phase. There were some customers involved in the ramp-up phase. You call them as early ramp-up customers. A lot of testing went on. So finally, they came up with the general availability. Means available for all the customers without any limitations with this HANA 1.0 with SPS 03. There onwards, it became a tradition for SAP. It's a tradition which they're following and they're going to follow in the future also. So that is every 6 months, almost every 6 months, you find one new support package stack released by SAP. You know what support package stacks are? So as I told you, it's a collection of support packages. And most of you might be knowing that what is a support package is consisting of. Any support pack will be consisting of mainly what? Corrections will be there. There may be some bugs, problem, bug fixes can be there, which we call them as corrections. And then you may have some enhancements for the existing functionality. Functionality is there, feature is already there, but they may have improved it. So enhancements for the existing functionality. And sometimes they may also provide you some new functionality which was not there earlier. So all these three of things can happen in any support pack. So as I told you, it's a tradition what SAP is following is every 6 months they're releasing one support package stack. Usually one support package stack you'll be getting in the month of May or June, and one support package stack will be getting the month of November or December. That's a tradition what SAP is following. Every year it happens like that. So that's why I'm not mentioning about everything after that. You can just imagine when the SPS 04 was released, 5, 6 like that. And 1.0, the last one was SPS 12. This was the last one. So this they released almost last year somewhere at the end of the May. So you can say it's May 2016. So now the latest version is this HANA 1.0, I mean 2.0 with SPS 00. November 30th they released it, almost end of November. So hardly in a matter of just a month or two you can expect SPS 1, and that goes on. It's a continuous process, you know that. Any product you develop, so you need to keep on doing this. This is a continuous process. Even if you consider something like SAP ERP application, which SAP started developing way back, where they came up with the proper ERP in early 80s. But even today, enhancements are going on. That's a continuous process, because depending on the customer requirements, a lot of changes you need to do for the product, some new functionalities you need to introduce. That all goes on. So this will help you out tomorrow when you project your experiences. See, today you should not think about learning directly 2.0, because tomorrow when you want to project your experiences, knowing about the previous versions also will be always very important for you. Because when you claim 2.5 years experience in HANA administration, you can't say that for the last 2.5 years directly you're working on 2.0. Okay, that's why our approach is going to be like that. I'll explain you initially what they did and what they enhanced, what kind of new functionalities they've introduced and all that. So it's too early for us to discuss what enhancements they did, in which support pack, what they did and all that. Because tomorrow when you're learning some specific topic, suppose installation, so what was the case earlier and what we have now? Any changes, any new things they've introduced? Similarly, backup and recovery you're learning. There also, what was there, what newly they've introduced, which support pack they've introduced new functionalities. So that's how the discussions will be, so that you'll understand those topics, and it will be easy for you to get into that, knowing about the old and new features they have. So irrespective of this, if a customer want to buy SAP HANA licensing, remember, so basically SAP is offering two editions of HANA. One is called HANA Platform Edition, and the second one is called SAP HANA Enterprise Edition. So there are two editions of HANA which SAP is offering to the customers. So we'll see. We'll be knowing about the differences between these two situations, what they prefer. So depending on the customer requirements, they can opt for either of these two, either Platform Edition or Enterprise Edition. So first let us begin with the Platform Edition. So Platform Edition is the most basic edition of HANA. When I say the most basic edition of HANA, it's consisting of the core components. You know what are core components, without which you cannot have any implementation. So the core components are provided, and apart from that, there are also some optional software components provided. So let us look at those the software components offered by SAP part of this platform edition. So in this platform edition only, SAP is providing you the database server. This is the most important core software component. We know that HANA is a database, in-memory database. So obviously, you need database server. So the database server software is provided to you part of this platform edition only. So SAP will provide you the database server software. Now, in my company or in any company, you want to run HANA database server. So whenever you want to run HANA database server in any company, so remember basically there are two important prerequisites you have. So those prerequisites to run HANA database server are like this. The first and foremost is the hardware, which we call it as appliance. So we know that SAP HANA, if you want to run in any company, in any production environment, it's mandatory to run HANA only on certified hardware. You're not allowed to run HANA on the normal hardware what we find in the companies. It's compulsory. And that certified hardware on which we can run HANA, that's what we call it as appliance. And these appliances are provided by a big list of vendors. So many vendors are there. You have IBM, you have Dell, HP, Cisco, Fujitsu, Lenovo, all these companies. There are more than 1100 models available as of today. And that number keeps on increasing. New models, new companies are getting into this because of the huge market we have for SAP HANA. So a lot of vendors are now certified. So that's the first thing you need to do. Actually, one of the biggest mistake most of the people they do in the project implementations is they don't consider this procuring appliance as part of the implementation. So that's going to be one of the biggest mistake in an implementation, because you have to plan it properly. Procuring appliance itself will take around 4 weeks of time. If you don't do it, if you don't plan it properly, so your project timelines will be definitely affected. So you need to be really planned for that. So, and if you want to procure a hardware, suppose we have a company where you are looking for using HANA as a warehousing solution or HANA as a data mart. So if you want to use HANA as a data mart, you need to buy an appliance. And if you want to buy an appliance, it's not like, it's not like just going to a shop. You can't just ask the shop guy, okay, give me a PC, right? So if you want to buy a PC or you want to buy a laptop, first of all, you should have some clarity. And you need to tell the shop guy, okay, I'm looking for a configuration like this. Then he can come up with options. Okay, and these are the company laptops there with that configuration you're looking for. Similarly, even for these customers also, so what you need to do, so basically you need to identify the hardware requirements of those customers. So if you're a basis guy, you might be knowing that. So as an administrator, that's your job. Okay, so that's the first thing you need to do. Identify the hardware requirements. And technically, that process, we call it as sizing. So you need to perform sizing and identify the hardware requirements, and based on that you can go and search for the appliance models. As I told you, more than 1100 models available. You can look and search for the suitable models for your company, and then the pricing we can get from those vendors, and you can freeze on one and you can procure that appliance. This whole process will take around 4 weeks, as I told you. So we have a couple of sessions exclusively dedicated for sizing itself, because as an administrator, that's one of our job. So we need to know about sizing more detailed way. It's not just the simple calculations. We are going to have a couple of sessions dedicated for that. We'll discuss in detailed way what is HANA sizing, how it will be done, using quick sizer, what general formulas they follow. I'll show you what are those models available in case customer is not interested in procuring appliances. having their own appliances, what are the cloud options we have, all that we'll discuss in those two sessions. So that's why I'm not going into that sizing now. Okay, so do the sizing first, and then based on that results of the sizing, you can procure. Even some customers, to simplify that, they can even opt for that, the t-shirt sizing. You might have heard about t-shirt sizing. So based on that also you can procure, you can decide on an appliance and you can procure the appliances. So once customer has freezed on an appliance and they procured it, then on that certified hardware, when you want to install HANA database server in your company, you want to run that HANA database server by installing it on that appliance. The second important thing here is it's not just having the certified hardware, and the important thing is the operating system. HANA database server we cannot run on all the operating systems. It's very limited. So when it comes to the operating system, we can say the only operating system on which we can run HANA database server is Linux. We are saying the only operating system on which we can run HANA database server is Linux. Linux is having a lot of advantages: lightweight, more secure, easy maintenance, a lot of open source operating systems we have. So that's why SAP has preferred that, where they're able to run this database server very, very effectively. So that's why they opted for that, and SAP made it mandatory. So you can't run HANA on any other operating systems. And that too, initially it was only SUSE Linux. The beginning, it was SUSE Linux Enterprise Server. So later on, from SPS 09, as there were some requests from many customers to support Red Hat, they started supporting even Red Hat Enterprise Linux also. Okay, so either of these two, either SUSE Linux or Red Hat, it must be 64-bit. So that operating system you can use, you can install, and on top of that you can install your HANA database server. So these are all open sources. You can just go and get them, and support you need to get from the respective companies. Red Hat is supported from SPS 9, remember that. So customers are having two options now, either SUSE or Red Hat. And no special software is needed. Any normal operating system is good enough. Normal SUSE Linux Enterprise Server or Red Hat, and they'll give you the versions, which versions are compatible. Those versions you need to download and install. Like, say example, SUSE Linux, which we are using in our landscape. Like, say if I want to install 2.0 now, we need 12.2. Okay, so 12.2 is more stable. So 12.2 SLES you can download, you can install it. On top of that, you can install the database server, like that. And that you can find in PAM, Product Availability Matrix. They'll give you the details about which operating system version is supported there. So once we have the appliance, on top of that, once you install your operating system with the basic settings, I mean, there's no exclusive special libraries you need to install and all that. A simple file system will be there. Based on that recommendations, you prepare your file system also, which we'll be learning at the time of installation. I'll explain you what file system you need to maintain. And then on top of that, you can just do the installation of database server, which hardly will take 15 minutes or maximum 20 minutes. So your database server will be ready. Now, in the company, we have that appliance, on top of that operating system installed, and then on top of that you install your database server. Now your database server, HANA database server, is running in the company. So when we have a database server running in the company, there are so many people who want to work with that, depending on, their roles and responsibilities. Different people want to access it, different people want to work with that. So mainly initially, technical people will work, technical people, maybe administrator, he may be a modeling consultant, he may be a development consultant. So they do different activities. But we can't allow these people to work on the servers directly. No way. There's no possibility of making all the people to work on the server itself directly. It's obvious that all these people, including administrators, will be working from client workstations. You'll be having separate client workstations where you have to perform your activities depending on your roles and responsibilities as part of that implementation. Even administrators also, it's not that everything you can do as an administrator. There is a limitation. Suppose you're a person responsible for backup activities, you're responsible, you do those activities only. Someone is responsible for monitoring and troubleshooting. Like that. Someone is a modeling consultant, you need to build data models in HANA for reporting purpose. There may be a developer who develops some applications within HANA. So all these activities, when they want to perform, as we are saying, they need to work from client workstations. So when you people want to work from the client workstations, so in the client workstation, basically you need an interface, right? So without which you can't do anything. You need some interface basically to work with your database. So interfaces, generally when you're speaking about, there will be two types of interfaces. One, call it as CLIs, command line interfaces, where we need to just type the commands and all. Or the second one, graphical ones. So graphical ones will be more easy, more convenient for you to perform your activities. So what SAP has done is, as these people need to work from client workstations, perform different activities. Instead of giving different tools, instead of giving one tool for administrator, one tool for modeler, one tool for development consultants, which will be difficult to set up and maintain and all that, what SAP has provided is only one graphical tool they're providing to you. That's what we call it as HANA Studio. Remember, HANA Studio is just a graphical tool, a simple graphical tool. And what we can do with this graphical tool, you can install it in the client workstation. And using this HANA Studio, the same tool, you can perform admin activities like stopping off your servers, taking backups, doing recoveries, security, user creation, roles creation, granting the privileges, monitoring, and doing some configuration settings. All this you can perform from the HANA Studio. It means admin activities you can do. And similarly, the same tool can be used to perform modeling activities. They build some data models for analysis purpose, for reporting purpose, like they do it in BW, like creating info cubes and all that. A similar kind of modeling activities they perform in case if they are going with analytics on top of this. And they can do that using the same tool, and even the development activities also. There is a facility to develop applications within HANA. You can develop some web-based applications very easily within HANA. So even those kind of development activities they can do by writing some JavaScripting, HTML5 and all that. So one single tool, all the activities that you need to understand. Tool is only one, but different activities. But it all depends on your roles and responsibilities part of the implementation. The most important thing is not just about having tool, you need to have a user account with required privileges. If you're an administrator, we'll give you an administrator account with required privileges. If you're a modeling person, only the modeling related privileges will be there for you. But the tool will be only one. So very simplified, easy to work with tool. But the point is, when you're working from client workstations, in the client workstation, what's the operating system you can expect? So when it comes to operating systems in the client workstations, you can expect Windows. So obviously, where you find Windows operating system, right? So that So it's quite natural that you can expect HANA Studio on Windows environment. In fact, SAP is giving HANA Studio, the graphical tool. You can install it on Windows, both 32-bit, 64-bit again. You can have it on Linux in case someone want to work on the server with that graphical tool, and even Mac also. So basically for 3 operating systems they'll provide you the Studio, Windows, Linux and Mac. Okay, because there is a confusion in the people. Some people just they look at the Studio in the client workstation. From the Studio they'll connect to the server, right? They assume that their HANA server is running on Windows. HANA database server never runs on Windows. HANA database server runs only on Linux. Only that graphical tool you have in Windows, that Studio graphical tool. Actually, now they're trying to simplify, they're just trying to avoid as much as possible when it comes to doing activities from the client workstations, doing installation of these tools and all that. They're trying to provide most of the times the thin clients. So you might have heard about that thin clients. You can access through browsers. Now, even those modeling activities, development activities, you can perform through browser. There's a web ID tool SAP is providing. And even for us also, even administrators also, uh, SAP started off with something called HANA Cockpit, which they've improved a lot in the last couple of years' time. A lot of enhancements and improvements they did. So a lot of admin activities we can do with Cockpit also, which is just a thin client. Just the browser, you need to type the URL and you can access it. Such cases, even the Studio is not required. But as a tool, remember this part of the platform edition, HANA Studio. So coming to this HANA Studio tool, there is a brief history behind this, which will be really good for you if you understand this and know this history behind this HANA Studio tool. Actually, this HANA Studio tool is not developed by SAP from the scratch. What they did is they take an existing popular IDE, Java IDE. They consider that as a platform, the base platform. You might have heard about something called Eclipse. Eclipse is a very popular Java IDE tool. It's well known for ages. I mean, last 20-25 years people are using it. A very popular one. So what SAP has done, they've taken the same Eclipse. That's a base platform. On top of that, they've added some additional software, just like, or add-ons or plugins, same kind of thing. So that add-on, additional software will give you those options like HANA administration, HANA modeling, and HANA development, these kind of things. But the base, the core is Eclipse. That's what you need to understand. But if you see the history of SAP, this is not first time SAP is using Eclipse. If you know anything about SAP application development, initially SAP used to rely only on ABAP programming for their application development. I'm speaking about application development. They completely relied on ABAP programming for their application development. But almost early 2000, when they started developing some web-based applications, so they realized that a lot of limitations we have in ABAP programming, particularly when it comes to developing those web-based applications or mobile applications. That's when what SAP has started doing is, once they've realized it, there are so many limitations in ABAP programming, they started using Java for their application development. So you might be knowing that SAP has developed some of their applications using Java. So that happened somewhere in early 2000 time period. Okay. So when they started doing it, they won't have a proper IDE tool at that time when they started developing SAP applications using Java. They won't have a proper IDE tool. So, Java is open source. At that time, a lot of IDE tools were there. In fact, IBM has came up with this Eclipse, which is open source. So at that time only SAP started using that Eclipse. When SAP came up with a NetWeaver in 2004, first time they've introduced a NetWeaver in 2004. Part of that only all these Java-based applications they've released. So at that time only they want to have that IDE tool with SAP features. SAP features in the sense the tool is same, but they want to have some options related to SAP application development. So that's when what they did is they taken that Eclipse platform, they added some additional software, and they've released it as something called NetWeaver Developer Studio, NWDS. That NWDS was released with the first release of NetWeaver in 2004. So that NWDS is basically Eclipse. On top of that, some additional software, which will give you an option to work with your EP, Enterprise Portal app developments, or even some features related to knowledge management and all that. So that was the beginning. This is nothing new. Now again, same thing. They are using the same Eclipse, added some additional software, and they're giving it as HANA Studio. Okay, the reason why I'm explaining about this Eclipse so much is there is a reason actually. This is a very important thing which as an administrator you need to know. To understand the significance of these tools, why Eclipse is so important in SAP solutions, is consider a situation now to understand the importance of this Eclipse and how the things are changing in SAP implementation environments. Suppose a customer is implementing ERP on HANA. ERP is an application, but underlying database is our HANA or even S/4HANA, whatever it is. So they are implementing ERP on HANA. If the customer is implementing ERP on HANA, there is an ABAP consultant working for that implementation. Earlier when these ABAP consultants used to work for that ERP, normally ERP with RDBMS, like if customer has implemented ERP with Oracle or ERP with DB2, ERP with SQL Server. At the time, these ABAP consultants were not worried about the underlying database because whatever that programming code they are writing, that programming code is completely independent of database, totally, completely independent of database. So that's how the ABAP program was designed, and so they were not worried about the database at all. Without knowing what is the underlying database, they used to do that all the development activities. But once the same ERP is released on HANA database, so to utilize HANA database functionalities more effectively, so what SAP done is SAP came up with some new techniques, what we can call them as optimization techniques. SAP has introduced a ABAP program optimized for HANA database. That's what they generally, they call it as ABAP HANA or HANA ABAP, whatever it is. So what is HANA ABAP? There's nothing like HANA ABAP. What is there? They've done is ABAP program will be same, but that ABAP program is optimized. I'm just repeating that HANA ABAP program is optimized for HANA database. Meaning of that is, so they need to implement some of these programming techniques, specialized programming techniques, so that they can extract more from HANA database. They can utilize the functionalities of HANA database more effectively. Okay, now the point is, when I say optimization techniques, earlier whatever the processing they used to do at the application layer, now they need to push it down to the database layer, because of which an ABAP consultant need to write two programmings. It's not just purely ABAP. You also need to write some programming code at the HANA database level. They need to use some scripting sometimes, SQL scripting. So the same person will be responsible for both. So when the same person is responsible for both, if he has to write ABAP programming, you need to use SAP GUI. You need to log into that ERP application, and then he'll go to something called ABAP Development Workbench. There he'll write ABAP programming. But you want to write some SQL scripting in a HANA database, you need to come to HANA Studio, connect to the HANA database. At the database level, you need to create some procedure where you'll write some coding, scripting. And then this procedure you need to call from that ABAP programming. So basically you need to work with two environments, two development environments. One, the ABAP Development Workbench, another one is HANA Studio. So it becomes more complicated. Complicated when I say customer is not worried. You know, we may feel as a developer, as a web developer, I may feel it's complicated, but customer is not interested in that. Customer is not worried what difficulties you're facing. Ultimately, at the end of the day, customer is always worried about the total cost. You know, when you're going around these two different tools, obviously there will be a lot of time you're going to waste, which will increase the time taken for your implementations. Obviously, the cost will increase. So that's where generally the customers will start complaining. So to make it more effective, to cut down the cost, the only way you can cut down the cost is if you can improve the productivity of these consultants, you can cut down the cost. That's when what SAP has started doing is, now the new kind of development environment SAP is providing is for all activities, only one development environment you have, that is Eclipse. So Eclipse, if you just add some additional software, as I told you, you're able to do HANA administration, modeling, development and all. Similarly, just more small additional software. There is something called ABAP development tools. If you can install the ABAP development tools on top of Eclipse add-on, you'll be able to do ABAP developments also in Eclipse. So you don't need to go to different places and do these activities. In same Eclipse environment, you're able to work with your HANA database level coding you can do modeling, you can do administration, you can do ABAP development. Not only that, BW modeling also you can do. Earlier, whatever the SAP GUI we have, where the BW modeling activities are done, like info cubes and all that they create. Now, it's not anymore, particularly in the latest BW for HANA. SAP is trying to eliminate all these new versions. They are trying to eliminate SAP GUI, which is, you know, a bit clumsy, complicated working environment. But now they are simplifying it. Now, all these development activities they are doing in Eclipse itself. So that's what we call it as Eclipse-based development environment. It's already being used in the companies. In the future also, it's going to be more. So that's why that Eclipse is so important. So why so much you need to know about this is tomorrow when you start working in a company as an administrator, they may ask you, hey, I want a web development environment in HANA Studio itself. They may refer to this like this. We want to do a web development in HANA Studio. Actually, the fact is they're asking you to set up the environment in Eclipse because underlying HANA Studio you have Eclipse. So what you have to do simply, what you need to know is there is a base platform Eclipse. You just need to add some more additional software. If that basic logic, if you understand, it's so simple. So just go to that same environment, Eclipse environment, where you have all these HANA related options. There itself, there is an option for you to add additional software. You just install that ABAP development tools. So easy. When you know that small logic, that simple add-on or small additional software, you'll be able to do it very easily. So that's why you need to understand these things so that as an administrator, you can set up those environments more easily in the companies. And sometimes they'll complain saying that why should I know about developments? You are not doing ABAP development. You're just setting up an environment for those people to work with. That's your job as an administrator. So that's why knowing about that will be really helpful for you. Okay, so this is just a basic some history about that HANA Studio. Anyhow, later on when you are going to set up, I'll show you that how practically you'll be doing it. So you have server running in the company. You have the client workstation where HANA Studio is installed. Fine. Now from the client workstation, from this tool, how do you connect to the database? How the connectivity takes place? Any database connectivity you take, any database connectivity for that matter, Oracle, SQL Server, DB2, anything like that, any database connectivity, you need drivers. Database connections will do with drivers. You might be knowing that ODBC, JDBC, these drivers, database connectivity drivers. So it's nothing different. It's nothing different. HANA is also a database. So obviously, when you say HANA is a database, if you want to connect to the HANA database, you need drivers here. The same way the JDBC, ODBC drivers. So what SAP has done is, instead of providing those individual drivers, all the drivers are provided in a small software here called HANA Client. It's not a tool, remember. HANA Client is basically collection of drivers, set of drivers. Set of drivers they are given, HANA JDBC drivers, HANA ODBC drivers, HANA ODBO drivers, all this they're provided part of this. Okay, MDX and all that. So in your client workstation, for that matter, any system from where you want to connect to the HANA database, you need these drivers. So these drivers, again, they are provided for different operating systems, many operating systems, almost everything. So you need to install this client software also, so that we can utilize those drivers and connect to the HANA database from the tools and perform what are the activities you want to do, depending on the privileges you have, depending on your roles and responsibilities, part of that implementation. Okay, so basically these are the three main core software components. Core software components, the most basic things. Wherever you work in the world, any customer, irrespective of their deployment scenarios, these three will be there. There will be a database server, there is a studio, there is a client. As I told you, some people say that my company is not using studio. Because the reason I told you, for some of those activities they use the thin clients which they can access through browser. But that's not possible always, because I can't do everything with those thin clients. There is a limitation with the thin clients. That's why most of the times studio is definitely needed. For some people, okay, thin clients will work, but not every situation. Okay, so that's why in general we say these three are the most common basic software components which are part of this platform edition, which we set up and use in any kind of implementations. Doesn't matter whatever that HANA deployment scenario is. Okay, so apart from this, SAP has given some optional software components also. Optional things. Optional means, what's the meaning of optional? As and when you need. So if I feel like, okay, this feature is needed, I can install that optional component and have that feature implemented. But it's not compulsory for every customer. Whenever they want it, they can implement it. So there are a lot of software components SAP is offering part of this platform edition itself. I'll give you the list, I'll explain you. So we are going to discuss, as I told you, it will take maybe tomorrow, and tomorrow half of the session is only for this, understanding all these components. Because knowing the components is very crucial, very important. Don't need to worry that whether we are going to use them in every company or not, but knowing will be very helpful for you. Okay. So hope you got this clear idea about these things. Tell me if you have any doubts on this, till this, whatever we discussed on this today.